now. Let's get right to the phones. John Commerford, National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action, our good friend. Buddy, the cavalry has arrived. I think Greg's got your arrival coming. Here it is. Oh. There it is. There we go. John, welcome in, brother. How you doing, man?
Pretty good lead-in. We'll start with that every single time.
I tell you what, I love it.
Happy Sunday. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for what you were doing. Now, we knew this was coming, but let's talk. Before the break, I was talking a little bit about some nuance here. The National Rifle Association, FPC, SAF waited absolutely no time whatsoever. Clearly, this was well planned. You knew this was coming.
Yeah, we work well together. Everybody's focused. We may have different strategies, but everybody's focused on the same goal, which is sending Abigail Spanberger a message that she can't do whatever she wants. She can't turn law-abiding Americans into felons with a stroke of a pen. And within 20 minutes of us breaking the news that she signed this into law late in the evening, we had our federal lawsuit filed. And then immediately after, NRA, along with Virginia Shooting Sports Association, our state association, filed our state lawsuit. So we have a dual track on this.
Yeah, I use the analogy that we're outflanking the governor right now, both state and federal, and there's reasons for that. Let's break down the difference between the federal case and the state case, because they both are, while they're going after the law, obviously, there's two different sets of rules in place here. The difference between the state and federal court lawsuits are what?
Well, the federal challenge is a traditional Second Amendment challenge, like we've seen with NRA's case in the Third Circuit, ANJRPC, which was heard in February en banc, and then the Seventh Circuit case, which NRA funded. These were combined with some others, but NRA's cases were the lead in oral arguments back in the Seventh Circuit in 2025. So you need to run a federal challenge, but Virginia is unique, and some of the listeners have probably learned more about the Virginia court system than they ever cared to recently with the crazy maps that they tried to ram through here in the Commonwealth. So we have a strong state constitution when it comes to Second Amendment rights and firearms. There's a conservative-leaning state Supreme Court. And then, of course, the entire goal here is to get an injunction to prevent this from going into effect on July 1. So we filed in a very strong district, conservative district that respects freedom, respects the Virginia Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution. And I know some of our friends in the Second Amendment space filed their own state lawsuits as well. So, there are a lot of fights happening here in the Commonwealth to send a message to this new General Assembly and this governor that misled the voters in the Commonwealth about where she truly stands. We're going to send her a message, and no one's sitting back and waiting for this. We're charging in just like your cavalry noise earlier.
I love that. Yeah, let's talk about Harmeet Dillon real quick. I'm going to cover a lot of ground with you fast because we only have you for this one segment.
Yep.
Harmeet Dillon threw that shot across the bow. That was an outright threat, and I loved it. I had the opportunity to interview Todd Blanche at the NRA meeting, as you know, in Houston, and everything he told me, both on air and off air, has so far come true. I'm expecting, could we see a federal DOJ civil rights case filed as early as tomorrow? I know she was busy. Harmeet was on Friday. I happen to know what she was doing, and she gets a pass. Could we see this happen? Because this is the multi-prong approach now. Now DOJ civil rights coming at her as well, just like Colorado?
Well, you have the Trump administration and DOJ under Todd Blanche's leadership, and Harmeet and Barry and some of the others who are truly, they're true believers in freedom and in the Second Amendment. They understand what it means, and their actions are showing they're purely focused on this. They're not treating it as a second-class right like so many have before. So I fully expect them to be engaged. We saw what they just did in Denver and in Colorado as a whole. With their challenges. So I think they are coming into this fight strong as well. Whichever tactic they choose, they're going to be a compounding force in this fight for freedom in Virginia.
What about SCOTUS now? Does this, it's my personal belief, this is just my personal opinion, but a lot of people in Washington and a lot of Supreme Court justices, remind people where you are right now, by the way.
I'm right here in Virginia.
You're in Virginia. And methinks there's some Supreme Court justices that are familiar with Virginia as well, the human side, forget the judicial side of this. They're paying very careful attention to this. Does this give them the push to take one of these cases finally, since they did not take the Snopes? Because let's be honest, if they had taken that Snopes case, we likely would have had a decision on that case coming down next month, and they didn't. So now we're behind the 8 ball. Does this push this forward?
Look, it's very simple. They need to take a case.
Yes.
We're dealing with things. This is a core constitutional right. It's a core civil right. These are items that turn everyday law-abiding Americans literally into felons overnight. And they're worried about things like pesticides labels and things like that. Not saying they shouldn't be doing that, but they need to take a core hardware case. NRA has our Duncan case pending right now. I think it's been conferenced 12 times.
That's right.
But the circuit cases that I mentioned before are going to create a unique situation. You're most likely, and I feel optimistic about our case in the Third Circuit, and then I don't feel optimistic about the Seventh Circuit. That's okay. That creates a circuit split, and that's what the Supreme Court looks for. But they know that's going to happen, and part of what we think is happening here is they're waiting to see where the Third Circuit rules on the ANGRPC case, because they sua sponte, they took that en banc on their own, which is very rare. So that's a good sign on the tea leaves for us. So they need to take a case, and as Justice Kavanaugh said, he thinks they'll do one within the next year or two.
Well, they need it this year. They need to take one of these cases.
Yep.
That we won't get any, and I believe that they're feeling that pressure right now. But I've got to ask this question. New Jersey, New York, Illinois, California, Colorado, Maryland, Delaware, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Washington State. Why has it taken us this long? Why are we putting up with this nonsense? What is it about Virginia that said, you know what, guys, enough is enough? Why? Why is this one so different and so important?
Well, I think you look at the fundamental shift that just occurred with one election, right? The next election is the most important in your lifetime because it is. Pennsylvania is 3 Senate seats away from having exactly what happened in Virginia happen there. So people need to show up in the polls. Now, Coloradans, they've gone through this, but the court looks a bit different now. That things have changed. This is why DOJ jumped in Denver and is suing Colorado as well in their magazines and with hardware. That we have the Bruen case open the door for the possibility to win on core Second Amendment
60,
and notably the most commonly owned firearm in America, which is America's rifle, the AR-15. NRA's work in the Bruen case and that victory got us to the next step. It's frustrating that it's taken this long, but we're going to get there.
Yeah,
they
we
are
will.
going to take a case.
Yeah.
And there's no other right that we're God-given in this country that is treated the way the Second Amendment is. And it's time for that to change.
Yeah, we're going to win this. There's no question about it. I feel really good about this. I just hate that it's taken this long to get there. But
30.
I guess we could go back to that. Things happen for a reason. Guys, we're going to win this. I promise you, we will win this. John, thank you for being here.